Supreme Personality of Godhead does not have one form, which for those who are accustomed to the culture of Vaishnavism seems to be quite obvious, because we know that there is the original form, Swayamrup Krishna, and there are many other forms. He appears in many forms. 10 forms are very famous in this world. Dashavatara, that is Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Vamana, Narasimha, Parashuram, Vamana, Vamana Parashuram, Ramachandra Bhagavan, and Balaram, Buddha, and Kalki. So not one, and then not one form means many forms. Not one can mean two, but it's understood to be many, just like in the Sanskrit word which is common in Bengal, anek in Bengali means, it literally means not one, but the practical usage of it means many. So he has many forms, or how many forms does he have? Avataram hiya sankheya. His avatars are uncountable. Who wants to count how many forms are there of Vishnu? There's no end. You can't, it's beyond our capacity to know. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, seeing the Vishvarup of Krishna, says, Pashami Tvam Sarvata Anantarupa. I see you everywhere in Anantarupa, unending forms. So sometimes this Vishvarupa, this universal form, is taken as an understanding that the Supreme is impersonal, but it's not impersonal because many forms were seen there. So how can it be impersonal? It's multi-personal. So Krishna is one yet many. This is one of those points, actually every point about him is inconceivable or conceivable to the extent that he blesses us to understand him as far as our very limited intelligence goes. Otherwise, as tiny living beings, we can understand almost nothing. Just like many of you here are students, and you have to study so hard for so many years just to understand some, in a very limited way, some very tiny facet of reality. And that also in a very limited way. So our capacity to understand is almost nothing. If we can, just like for instance, Krishna says, Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjana bhavishyani cha bhutani mang tu vedana kaschana. Krishna says, I understand everything past, present and future, but me no one knows. Now we may think, well, we understand about the present, but we don't even understand about the present. Practically nothing. Just like we're all breathing. Now that I've brought it to your attention, you're all aware that you're breathing. Otherwise we don't even think about it. But it goes on, we don't even know. And how the different gas, especially the oxygen, we're told, it metabolizes within our system, and then we give out carbon dioxide. And there's so many biochemical reactions going on in our bodies all the time, of which we're not aware. If we study for many years, we can be aware of the mechanics of it. Is it? But we don't know actually. I mean, even though you've studied medicine for how many years? 6 years or something you had to study? 5 years. But you still can't say what's exactly going on in your pancreatic gland right now, for instance. There shouldn't be much going on unless you just ate something. But something must be going on. And that's only concerned with the body. What to speak of the mind, which is even, the body is complex, but the mind is even more complex. And then there are all kinds of living beings within our bodies, in our nabhi, in our belly button. There are living beings there are little beings in our eyebrows. They probably didn't teach you that. But I read that on an article on the website, that there are tiny little beings. Everyone has them in their eyebrows. How about that? Then what to speak of the situation around us? I don't know what you are thinking. We're not even fully or hardly aware of what we ourselves are thinking. At the manifest level of our consciousness, if we think about it, we can have some understanding about what we're thinking. But there are so many subliminal thoughts. There are so many, in Sanskrit that's called sanskars, impressions which are deep in our minds, which we're not even aware of. So we don't even know about ourselves hardly anything, and what to speak about the world around us. Even the world immediately around us, the sphere of consciousness, which is limited by this matrix called the body, we know practically nothing. So we can understand Krishna to the extent that He lets us understand. He has an unlimited number of forms. At the same time, He is one person. Advaitam achyutam anadim anantarupam adyang puranam purushang navayovanam cha. He is one. He is Advaita, which means He is not of the nature of two-ness. What to speak of threeness or fourness or fiveness or manyness. He is Achyuta. He is fixed in His position, unlike us. He is beginningless, and He has Anantarupa, unlimited forms. So He's one but many also. Eko bahunam vedatati kamam. He is one but He fulfills the desires of many. Eko bahu syam, stated in the Upanishads. Although He's one, He has become many. At the same time, we shouldn't think that this means that everything is Bhagavan. In one sense, yes, but not in every sense. Bhagavan means the supreme, which means there is also the subordinate. So, in one sense, everything is Bhagavan because everything is expanded from Him. But at the same time, I am not Bhagavan, you are not Bhagavan. Even the people who are advertised as Bhagavan in the modern age, they're mostly not Bhagavan. So it's not that because He has many forms and because He is present everywhere and manifest in everything, doesn't mean that everything is Vishnu. This point should be very carefully understood. Otherwise, if we think that everything is directly Bhagavan, then we deny actually who Bhagavan is, because He's supreme. Why does He have so many forms? We may ask. Well, one answer to that is, it's not up to us to ask. He is the supreme and He can do it. He is as He likes to be. He takes many forms to enjoy in many ways. He's the supreme enjoyer. He takes many forms. One of his pleasures is coming to this world and relieving it from the various difficult situations. And therefore he takes forms suitable for that, such as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha. These forms, they're suitable for particular pastimes. But there are also devotees who are particularly attracted to the various forms of the Lord. And so he takes forms according to the desires of his devotees who wish to relate with him in various ways. Bhakti chapahata rupa. He assumes various forms according to the desires of his devotees. That doesn't mean that someone can think, well, I'm a devotee, so I want him to appear in the form of Batman, or something like this. There's the desires of the devotees, they're also not, although the devotees do have their own individual desires of how to reciprocate the Lord, ultimately everything gravitates around Him. And there are certain forms of the Lord. It's not that we can invent some form of Vishnu. With each form, although He is the same Supreme Person, there is a different mood, different pastimes, different attitude in relationship with His devotees. So, how Lakshmi Narayana relates with his devotees in Vaikuntha, the bhav, or the feeling, the overall feeling is somewhat different to that of how other forms of Narayana relate with their devotees, such as Nrsimha. And especially Rama is a very different mood. The devotees relate to him as he's like a fatherly figure, being the king of Ayodhya. And then again, Krishna, it's a different mood. And Krishna relates with his devotees differently in Dwaraka. In Dwaraka, he relates with his devotees differently to the devotees who he relates with in Vrindavan. There's a whole different set of devotees. So, each form of the Lord, although He's the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, He enjoys differently in different ways, in different forms, although He's the same person. An example may be given, just like the same person in this world, he, in different circumstances, he dresses differently, he's known by different names, he has different set of people who he relates with, and different relationships with them. For instance, in his home, a man relates with his wife and children, and they call him by affectionate names, or actually in Vedic culture, the wife is supposed to call the husband by respectful name, such as Swami, and the children refer to Pitaji. And at home he may be dressed in some very informal clothes, or he may go bare-chested, something like this in the summer, at home. And he may relax and lie down on the floor with his children, play with them. If he's in his office, then he'll be dressed differently, and people will relate to him differently. He'll be known by some formal name. Then with his friends, it's somewhere in between. He's not so formal, but he's not so informal as at home. And when he goes to meet his friends, he may dress in some casual clothes, but he's not so likely to go bare-chested, for instance. So even people in this world, in different situations, they'll be known by different names, by a different set of people who will relate to him in different ways. So Krishna, he's the supreme person, and he takes pleasure in relating with different devotees in different situations, in different forms and with different names, although he's the same person. So that's Naikarupah. He's one person, but in many forms. Another understanding of this is that we may think that, well, we want to go back to Godhead and Krishna's there, but how are we going to get anywhere near Krishna? Because there are already so many devotees. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. And we may think that, well, maybe it's not so much Jai, because how can I get anywhere near Krishna? There's already so many gopis and everyone. I'll just have to watch Krishna from a distance. But Krishna can make himself available to each one of us personally. And that's described in the Rasa Leela, that Krishna expanded, there were billions of gopis, and Krishna expanded himself into billions of forms and danced with everyone individually. When Krishna would take lunch on the banks of the Yamuna with his cowherd boyfriends, he would expand himself into many forms so that every boy thought that, oh, Krishna's with me. That's nice. In Dwaraka, Krishna had 16,108 wives, and he expanded himself into 16,108 forms. Not that he was with one wife and 16,107 were simply crying, oh, I never got to see my husband. But he was with them all the time. Krishna, he's well known as the son of Madhya Yashoda, but all the other gopis of the age of Yashoda, they also wanted to personally feed Krishna and dress him and bathe him and put him to sleep. So Krishna fulfilled their desire. When Brahma stole all the cowherd boys, then Krishna took the form of their sons, and they served him in their sons in this way. And their affection for their sons, who was actually Krishna, increased so many times because they served Krishna in this way. And the cows, they also thought, we want to give Krishna our milk. And so Krishna took the form of the cows, and they were so affectionate toward them because that was Krishna. So Krishna is not limited. We can serve Krishna directly. Always we have to think, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant, but at the same time, Jiveswarupoi Krishna Nitya Das. We all have our own eternal relationship with Krishna, and Krishna can personally interact with us because he's not limited to any one form. Anyone in this world who becomes a little bit prominent, he necessarily becomes distant from most people or many people who would like to interact with him. Just like even Srila Prabhupada had so many disciples, in the beginning of his movement, he would intimately interact with all his disciples because there were only a few. Later, there were so many disciples that he didn't even try to interact personally with each one, because how many people can you talk to and deal with personally? So that's a fact of life in this world. We can only interact with so many people. I'm sure there are plenty of people in India who would like to tell the Prime Minister what they think about what he's doing and what he should do. But you can't get anywhere near him. It's very difficult for most people there's no possibility of, even if you tried, there'll be very little possibility of even getting to speak to him for 1 or 2 seconds. And even if you did, he wouldn't be interested to listen to what you said. But Krishna's not like that, because Krishna's unlimited. So that gives us great hope that he's Naikarupah, not just one form for everyone, but one person, but able to make himself available for everyone. So name 273 is Brhadrupah, very big form. He can be very small, he can be very big. Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan. He's the smallest, smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. So an example of the very big form is, well, there are different examples. There is Varahadev, who became so big that he picked up the earth planet. We cannot imagine, it's completely beyond our ability to imagine how any form can be so big as to pick up the earth on the edge of the snout. So, what are you going to do? You're going to do scientific research to find out if it's possible? It's beyond our imagination. We simply have to accept it on the basis of Shastra. That if there is God, then He's not limited to what we think might be possible. If He's God, then He should be able to do any such thing. If He's God, if we say, well, I believe in God, but He can only pick up not more than half a ton at a time. And let's be realistic. But our ideas of realism are limited by our own limitations. We tend to think in terms of our own limitations. So we should toss out our own limited way of thinking when it comes to understanding Vishnu. The story of the cobbler who was told by Narad Muni, that story is instructive. The cobbler told Narad Muni told the cobbler that he had just come from Vaikuntha, and in Vaikuntha he had seen Narayana putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the cobbler said, oh, marvelous. And Narad said, you believe that? Yeah. Why not? He can put a whole huge tree in a seed, so why can't he put an elephant through the eye of a needle? Everything is possible for him. We should suspend our so-called rationality when it comes to understanding the nature of God. The atheists, they won't believe. They'll say, oh, how is that possible? We never saw anyone so big he can pick up the whole earth. It's not possible. It's called frog philosophy. Dr. Frog, living in the bottom of a well, thinks that there's nothing bigger than his well. He's sure. I never saw anything bigger. I never saw anything bigger than the well. My father and grandfather, they never saw anything bigger than the well. How can there be anything bigger than the well? Frog philosophy. So, very big form. How big? Much bigger than we can imagine. Try and imagine a form that's so big. Just think how big it would be. It's so big you can pick up the earth. We can't imagine, because even if we were to see, we couldn't see. If Varahadev, Vamana also became so big. But if we were to see, we couldn't see because it'd be so big that we wouldn't be within the limits of it would go beyond the limits of our ability to see. We can't see that big. We can't see that much. So we see him through the eye of Shastra. We accept what is stated in Shastra. Varaha, so big, and then Vamana also. Vamana means this very small form, but it became so big that with 2 steps he could cover the whole universe. Actually, with 1 step he can cover the whole universe, or even with less than 1 step he can cover the whole universe. But he decided to take a form that size. Krishna, twice he showed to Mother Yashoda his Vishvarupa. Once she looked in his mouth and she saw all the universe within Krishna's mouth. So how big is Krishna? If the whole universe is within his mouth. So how great is Krishna? Jananta eva janantu kingba hukjana me prabhu manusa what is that? Manusha vachasa vapi vaibhavam tapagocharaha. Lord Brahma says that some people may say, I understand Krishna. Well, let them say like that if they like. But Brahma says, as far as I'm concerned, I can't say I know anything about Krishna. It's beyond the ability of myself to understand. So, reading and hearing about this Vishnu Sahasranama, we can just understand that we cannot understand, and at the same time be very happy in understanding that we cannot understand, and bow down to Him who is so great and so kind that even though He is of such immense form, He makes Himself available to us. Even though He has an immense form, He makes Himself available to us. We can worship Him in the form of the deity. That is His kindness. One other thing to consider is that He picks up the whole world, then how small is this world in comparison to Him? We take it all very seriously. What will happen to this world? What is going on? Who will be the next Prime Minister? This, that. And we take ourselves very seriously. But we're all so very small in comparison to Him. This whole world. We study so many things about this world. Science and geography and history. But what is this world? It's very, very tiny in comparison to Vishnu. So real education means to understand Vishnu. And any other subject we may study, if we understand it in relationship to Vishnu, that is perfect understanding. And anything we may study, if we don't understand the connection with Vishnu, then it's all useless. It's not education at all. So, name 274 is Sipivistah. Sipivistah, which means He who pervades the rays. What does that mean? That means that whatever light is there, the rays of the sun, the rays of the moon, the light emanating from fire, that is pervaded by Vishnu. So he is the active principle of light in everything. As he says in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhasmi Shashi Suryayoho. He is the light of the sun and the moon. So, when we see the sun rising, traditionally in Vedic culture, just when the sun is rising, people offer some prayers to the sun. And still some people do that. You see some people still do that? Some people do. And Vaishnavas can do so by offering prayers to Surya Narayan, or we can offer the prayer Yat Chakshuresha Savita Sakala Grahanam Ityadi. Or that by chanting Brahma Gayatri Mantra, which is conceived of as a invocation to the sun, which gives light to the three worlds. A great personality who gives light to the three worlds. But, of course, this Brahma Gayatri, its meaning is translated or interpreted according to different schools and sampradayas. But we understand this is Vishnu because it is He who is the principle of light. He pervades the rays of the sun and the moon and even this light, that He's active there, He's present there. Another meaning of Sipivistah, as given in Mahabharata, is Shipi can, apart from meaning rays, it can also mean animals. So He's present in all living beings. So that's another meaning. Many of these names, their meaning overlaps. Just like Bhutatma, one of the names of Vishnu Sahasranama, which we already discussed. It means He is the life of all living beings. So, name 275. They have some disturbance there. Is that window open? Should we close that? No, everything's closed. Okay, Prakasanah. That's a well-known word. Prakasha means light. One who illumines everything. One who shows himself to his devotees. So this name also, it overlaps with other names in Vishnu Sahasranama. So, I won't dilate on it more. He is the light. It's quite a common name in India still today, Prakash. Anyone here with the name Prakash? So it's the name of Vishnu. Did you know that? Now you know. So, often people think that Prakash is just some impersonal energy. But that is actually Vishnu also. Light is very important, isn't it? Without it, it's very difficult to do anything. So, Krishna is the light. And of course the word light is also used to mean illumination in the sense of understanding, knowledge. Yadaditya gato tejam, that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, He is the light of the sun. Then Jnanena tu tad ajnanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham adityavaj jnanam prakashayati tatparam. He says that just as when the sun rises we can see everything clearly, so when realization dawns in our hearts, then we can understand the Supreme very clearly. So in that sense, Krishna is the light also. But that's discussed in several names already here in Vishnu Sahasranama. So I won't go on that further, especially as there's so much noise outside. I think we'll just stop and we can have Arati a little early. This may go on for all night, huh? No? Hope it doesn't go on all night. Okay, so Hare Krishna. So that's names 272 to 275. 4 names.